He gave up a Fortune 500 future just to impress his daughter. And in less than 30 days, everything he built collapsed. They say power makes people blind, but in his case, it made him reckless. And the cost? $1 billion empire. Before we dive in, if this story moves you, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to keep the stories coming your way. Just a heads up, we don't just share stories here, we invite you to experience them. There's a little quiz at the end, just for fun. It's our way of saying thanks for watching closely and spotting the subtle moments others might miss. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Now let's talk about David Quinn. He wasn't some back office nobody. David was the guy who turned a nearly bankrupt Midwest logistics firm into a national powerhouse. 18-hour days, 7-day weeks, missed birthdays, ulcers, the works. But when the CEO's daughter walked into headquarters fresh out of college, everything David had built started crumbling. She had a fashion degree and an Instagram following. He had 15 years of sweat equity and a plan to take the company public. Guess who got shown the door? The morning it started, Chicago's skies were steel gray, and the conference room windows blurred with drizzle. Inside, the air felt heavier than usual, not because of the weather, but because of her. Chloe Sterling, 22, loud, beautiful, and terrifyingly unqualified. The CEO's daughter had just been appointed Chief Innovation Officer, and David Quinn was ordered to cooperate fully with her vision for modernizing operations. Her first proposal? Scrap the entire warehouse logistics system David had spent years optimizing and replace it with a drop-shipping app she found on TikTok. It wasn't a joke. She even presented it with a slideshow titled Vibes Over Freight. David tried to be diplomatic. He'd been in boardrooms long enough to know when to bite his tongue. But the app didn't even support enterprise integration. It crashed twice during the demo. And Chloe's solution? Let's just manifest a fix. Stress kills creativity. By week 2, Chloe had redecorated the executive floor with neon lights and beanbags. By week 3, 3 regional managers had quit. And by the end of the month, David Quinn was fired. No warning, no thank you. Just a pink slip on a Friday afternoon and a forced escort out the building. The CEO didn't even look him in the eye. Instead, he said, "My daughter's ideas will shape the future. You're too rigid." Rigid. That word would echo in David's head for weeks. But while he was packing up his desk, the company's stock quietly dipped 4%. Nobody panicked. Not yet. The next week, Chloe implemented a full remote work policy across logistics and freight management. Yes, warehouse workers were told to connect via Zoom for inventory sync. Shipments began missing. Clients canceled contracts. 2 lawsuits hit the company, back to back. And within 1 month, shares plummeted 37%. CNBC called it the fastest self-inflicted collapse in freight sector history. David watched it all unfold from a diner in Des Plaines, coffee in hand. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat, he just whispered one word: rigid. The waitress, a woman with crow's feet and a tired smile, gave him a refill without asking. She'd seen him in that booth every morning since his firing. Tie still knotted, hair still parted, like he hadn't quite figured out how to be unemployed. There were no lawsuits from him. No LinkedIn posts exposing the company's downfall. David Quinn wasn't that kind of man. He believed in systems, order, logic. He'd always thought those things would protect him. They didn't. He had built the company's infrastructure like a surgeon, calculating, methodical, precise. And yet, he was tossed aside like spoiled leftovers for someone who couldn't tell the difference between freight tracking and influencer metrics. He pulled out a napkin, as he often did, and started scribbling again. Not for revenge, that wasn't David's style, but because the numbers never stopped speaking to him. Revenue models, routing optimizations, failure contingencies, all dancing around in loops he couldn't ignore. Across town, Chloe Sterling was live streaming from the company's main office with a ring light in one corner and a smoothie bar in the other. She had rebranded the freight giant as a Gen Z forward experience platform, whatever that meant. In one clip that went viral on Twitter, she declared, "Trucking is a vibe, not just a vehicle." Her followers cheered. The board, however, didn't. Behind closed doors, murmurs had begun. The CFO resigned without explanation. The COO, a longtime ally of David Quinn, had quietly stopped showing up to meetings. But Chloe? She doubled down. She announced a new initiative: rebrand everything. Logos were changed. Vendor contracts were ripped up. And when asked about shipping delays on a company-wide Zoom call, she laughed and said, "Sometimes the universe tells you to slow down." David heard that quote from a former colleague who still texted him, whispering updates like a war correspondent. "She's turning it into a joke," the man wrote, "like it's a social experiment." But for David Quinn, this wasn't an experiment. It was 15 years of his life unraveling. He didn't care about the building. He didn't even care about the title. What hurt, what truly hurt, was that no one fought for him. The CEO, Martin Sterling, had always been two people: the mentor in the boardroom and the absentee father who only showed up when Chloe got a flat tire or failed a class. David had covered for him for years, running point on key decisions, shielding Martin's absence from investors, sometimes even forging signatures when approvals were late. He thought that meant something. But when it came down to it, blood beat logic, and Chloe didn't just walk in. She replaced him, with smiles, with vibes, with filters. 2 weeks after his firing, David was in the parking lot of an industrial supply expo, not to attend, just to think. He'd started doing that, driving to places he used to matter. That's when he saw her. Not Chloe, the other her, Evelyn Cortez, senior systems analyst, quiet, brilliant, the kind of person who could reverse engineer a bottleneck blindfolded. She was standing by her car, visibly stressed, rummaging through her glove compartment. David rolled his window down. "Everything all right?" She looked up and blinked twice. Then recognition hit. David Quinn? They hadn't spoken since the firing. She hadn't called. No one had. But now she stepped forward slowly, like seeing a ghost. "I've been meaning to reach out," she said, voice low. "I didn't know how." He gestured to the passenger seat. She hesitated, then got in. For a while, neither said a word. Just silence and soft engine hums. Then Evelyn spoke. "She's destroying it, David." He didn't need to ask who. "There's a warehouse in Kansas that hasn't received updated routing in 6 days. 6. And Chloe posted a photo yesterday from the lobby. She was modeling a new branded hoodie that says Logistics Queen." David stared ahead. "Why are you still there?" Evelyn looked down at her hands. "My mortgage." He nodded. That was real. That was life. "I've been documenting everything," she whispered. "I don't know why. Maybe I thought someone would care." He turned to her. "I care." And he meant it. Over the next week, Evelyn sent him spreadsheets, memos, voice notes, everything Chloe had touched, everything she'd broken, everything the board had ignored. One message stood out. It was a forwarded email from Martin Sterling to Chloe. "Whatever you do, keep David Quinn away from the Kansas accounts. He's too embedded, too respected." They'd follow him. David read it twice, then a third time. So Martin knew. He knew that loyalty still existed. He just chose to smother it before it could speak. That night, David didn't sleep. He paced. He pulled out old blueprints of the Kansas hub, a facility he'd helped design from the ground up. He marked every system flaw Chloe had caused, every potential fix she'd overlooked. And then he made a list. 12 names, 12 people still inside the company who might remember what competence looked like. At the bottom, he wrote, Evelyn Cortez, Marcus Leland, Jenny Park, Eric Cho, Stephanie Wells. One by one, he would reach out, not to wage war, but to build something. He wasn't sure what yet, but the silence had gone on long enough. Meanwhile, inside Sterling Freight HQ, Chloe was unraveling. She didn't show it publicly, of course. Her Instagram feed was still full of green smoothies, captioned CEO Life. But behind closed doors, vendors weren't returning calls. Her digital innovation rollout had crashed again, and a board member had just asked her, bluntly, "Did you really fire David Quinn over a TikTok strategy?" She lied, of course. Blamed restructuring, blamed internal resistance to change, blamed everything but the truth. But the walls were closing in. Martin had gone silent. Her friends had stopped visiting the office. And on her desk was a printed article from Bloomberg Business, circled in red pen. The collapse of a Gen Z vision. How inexperience, nepotism, and poor leadership killed a freight empire. Chloe stared at it until the letters blurred. She'd wanted so badly to prove she could do it. Be the future, outrun his legacy. But now the future looked like a burning warehouse in Kansas. And a name she couldn't erase from the whispers, David Quinn. 3 days later, Evelyn texted David. "Something's happening. Chloe's office door's been closed for hours. People are talking. I think the board's planning something." David responded with just one word. Not out of arrogance, but clarity. Good. He stood from his booth, left a tip under the coffee mug, and walked out into the afternoon light. Still jobless, still labeled rigid, but no longer waiting. David Quinn wasn't chasing revenge. He was chasing restoration. Something deeper than paychecks or prestige. He wanted accountability. Not for headlines, but for the dozens of people who trusted him, who gave everything to build something real, only to watch it disintegrate under fluorescent lights and corporate delusion. By the time he reached his car, he had already composed the first message in his head. Subject line, "You know me. That's why I'm writing." Body. "You were there when we broke 50 million in freight margins. You know how much of that came from grit, not gimmicks. I don't want to pull you into anything reckless, but if you're tired of being told to vibe your way through disaster, we should talk." He sent it to 4 names. Waited. By evening, 3 had responded. "Let's talk. I've got receipts too." I knew it wouldn't last. David met with them in person over greasy diner burgers and lukewarm coffee. No slideshows, no NDA contracts, just truth. Stephanie Wells had been quietly building a shadow document of Chloe's decisions, complete with timestamps and flagged email chains. Eric Cho had been asked to falsify data in a board presentation. He didn't, and was demoted a week later. Jenny Park had been left out of meetings for not understanding the brand aesthetic. She ran analytics for a living. None of them wanted to sue. They wanted something real, something to belong to again. A new company? Maybe. A consulting pivot? Possibly. But before any of that, they needed the truth exposed. Not with billboards, not with drama, but with numbers. David still had access to a public beta warehouse scheduling algorithm he built on his own time, and never transferred to the company legally. It had been shelved after Chloe's rebranding, but quietly, David had updated it weekly, just in case. They named the new workspace Slate, a clean slate. No socials, no company site. Just encrypted folders, Slack aliases, and the truth. Meanwhile, Chloe Sterling was unraveling publicly now. In one leaked internal email, she accused a regional director of sabotaging the Vibe pipeline. In another, she told a vendor, "Your trucks give off old energy. We're looking for a fleet that feels more Gen Z." The vendor had pulled out of a $6.2 million annual contract within 48 hours. Back at HQ, Chloe held a staff-wide meeting to reignite team flow. She handed out crystals and ordered a mandatory guided meditation session. One employee live tweeted the whole thing. The hashtag #, freight and feelings trended briefly, but the damage wasn't funny to the investors. Not anymore. Martin Sterling had grown silent. No more pep talks or forwarded TikToks. And word was, he'd started skipping board meetings. At home, Chloe still tried to keep up appearances, polished morning routines, filtered photos with quotes like, "Don't be afraid to replace the system, even if you didn't build it." But late at night, she paced. Alone. She knew David Quinn's name was circulating again. People didn't say it loudly, but it was there, in whispers, in side eyes. In the cautious way the IT department had started restoring archived models he built. She hated it, because for all her public confidence, Chloe remembered. She remembered the way he never looked at her like a child. He'd challenged her in meetings, not with disdain, but with data. He never rolled his eyes. He never raised his voice. He just questioned, and she hated that it made her feel small. But instead of learning from him, she tried to erase him. Now the cracks were showing, and no filter could hide them. Back at Slate, the data was getting clearer. Stephanie found the tipping point. A Chloe-signed directive that rerouted deliveries to an unlicensed third-party vendor, promising experiential distribution. The vendor was a shell. No trucks, no warehouse, just an Instagram page with 3 posts and a glowing review from Chloe herself. David didn't say, "Gotcha." He didn't smile. He just highlighted it, time-stamped it, and added it to a folder marked Board Review. They weren't trying to take the company down. They were giving it one last chance to right itself. They knew Sterling Freight could still be saved, but only if it remembered what it once was. The night before they planned to submit the report anonymously, David stood alone in his apartment, a modest second-floor unit with boxes he still hadn't unpacked. He stared at a framed certificate on the wall. David Quinn, Director of Operations, 2009 to 2023. He didn't hang it for vanity. He hung it as a reminder that the work mattered, even if people forgot. His phone buzzed. Evelyn Cortez. "She's in the Kansas office. No one told us she was coming. She just showed up. They're saying she's trying to fire the remaining execs in person." David stared at the screen, then typed, "Do you want me to come?" No answer. Just the 3 gray dots. Then nothing. He grabbed his keys anyway. He didn't drive straight to Kansas. He stopped first at the old warehouse in Joliet. It was still marked with the original company logo, faded but proud. He had trained supervisors here, helped build worker safety protocols, even helped a junior manager propose to his girlfriend right by the loading dock. It wasn't just business to him. It was life. He stood outside the gate and let the air hit him. Cold, dry, familiar. Then he opened his laptop and uploaded the entire board review folder to a secure cloud server. Just in case. He didn't trust Martin. He didn't trust Chloe. And maybe, he was finally learning to trust himself. Meanwhile, Chloe was shouting. Inside the Kansas office, surrounded by regional heads and confused supervisors, she was red-faced and trembling. "You think you can hide behind protocols? You think David Quinn's gonna save you?" Her voice cracked. "Let me tell you something. He's not coming back. And if any of you are caught communicating with him, that's grounds for dismissal. Understood?" No one spoke. No one moved, because the silence said everything. She wasn't fighting David Quinn anymore. She was fighting a ghost she helped create. Back in his car, David received one last message before the signal cut. From Evelyn. "You were right not to compromise. They're scared. Not of what you'll do, of what they've already done." He read it once, then started the engine. No banners, no mission statement. Just quiet wheels turning on the highway, and in his eyes, a flicker of purpose. sometimes the fall doesn't come from incompetence. It comes from arrogance wrapped in charm, protected by a last name. David Quinn didn't storm the gates. He didn't burn the house down. He simply stood still and let the truth walk back in on its own. Because when power forgets the people who built the foundation, it doesn't collapse from outside pressure. It crumbles quietly from the cracks they chose to ignore. And in the end, the man they called rigid was the only one who never bent until it broke. Before you go, remember, there's always a quiz at the end. Be the first to answer. Don't let someone else steal your spotlight. Drop your answer in the comments. We love seeing who's really paying attention. And if this story made you feel anything, anger, vindication, or even just quiet reflection, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. At Fiction Echoes, we don't just tell stories. We share echoes of the ones you feel. We'll see you in the next one. Quiz. What was the name of the CEO's daughter who was appointed Chief Innovation Officer?